Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. This is episode 19 with Eric Norris.
Morris.
Eric Morris. See, we
Sorry.
hardly know each other. Eric and I are doing this on a spur of the moment because Eric saw the interview with Andrew Basevich and reached out to me. He is a veteran and a veteran for peace. And he said, I want to join. I want to help. What can I do? And I was really excited to know that there was another Catholic against militarism out there. So I figured as long as we're going to talk, let's just make a podcast out of it and get to know each other. So thanks for being willing, Eric.
You're welcome.
All right, so we don't know anything about each other. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm in my 40s, in my 20s, after my undergraduate at the University of North Carolina, I worked for a couple of years, and then I started law school at the University of Wyoming. And as I said in the Lou Rockwell piece that he gratefully published on Monday, I realized I wasn't going to probably be the next great lawyer in the world, so I realized it was going to be expensive. So I saw a sign that said, join the Wyoming National Guard and you get your college paid for. And it kind of brought back thing I originally had. I grew up in a Catholic household, but I had never really questioned the military.
As many of us don't. It's not even a thing. We don't even think twice about it, right? Yeah.
No. So I originally had wanted to go to the Air Force Academy and basically get a free flying education. But
Wait, can I ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
Did Top Gun have anything to do with that?
No, not really.
Okay, just thought I'd check.
But my father was in the Marine Corps, and both my grandparents served in World War II. But as you see, I have glasses, so I about the time you would apply, I ended up basically blind, so I wasn't going to be able to get into the Air Force Academy. So I didn't join the military during undergraduate. I didn't join ROTC, but then 9/11 happened, so it kind of coincided with law school. And again, now that I should have asked my mother before I talked to you, but I'm pretty sure my grandfather was strongly against probably even the first Gulf War because Pat Buchanan was and Ron Paul were. But I don't remember that teaching of my grandfather. I remember a lot of his political views, but I don't remember him strongly anti-war, though I'm pretty sure he was. He was anti-government or he was keep the U.S. out of the UN and that type of stuff, but I don't remember specifically teaching on the nature of the military, and I don't remember him telling me, hey, you shouldn't join the military now. So. And
this is your grandfather who was in World War II, right?
He was in World War II, correct. And
okay.
But highly skeptical of government action. So I should have probably called him before I joined in 2003, just to get his real viewpoints. But I didn't. We never. As you know, you grew up. I'm assuming you grew up Catholic, right?
Yep.
It's just not talked about. The just war theory is not talked about. Militarism is not talked about. So
never heard of it. Never heard of just war theory. First time I heard of it was in college because my brother did some kind of dissertation thing in college on just war theory. I think he was going into the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, what's that? And but my understanding as a Catholic growing up was that it's wrong to kill unless in war. And if it's in war, it's like, what? It's war. What are you going to do? Like, I had no idea.
Right. Yeah. And now that I've gone back, and Pat Buchanan has like a whole series on why all these wars were not appropriate. And I knew of Pat Buchanan and a very good Catholic, but why that didn't translate down to my conscience, I don't know. It's basically a malformed Catholic conscience that I didn't know what the teaching and the supposed tradition of the church was on this, and whether I knew Pope John Paul II said war was never the answer going into the Iraq war, but our bishops in the United States, I don't think they really did a very good job of then hammering that strong, very definitive message home. And I'm sure Cardinal Ratzinger, then Pope Benedict XVI, also spoke out against the Iraq War, but it didn't resonate with me. So as I was planning to join, I did not think anything about it being potentially harmful, sinful, or I didn't look at it in aspect.
No, and I think most Catholics don't, because we're not taught anything about those teachings. It's mum's the word.
Right.
And it's interesting too that you bring up Pat Buchanan and then your grandfather being conservative, because a lot of conservatives are highly, highly skeptical of government action,
Right.
except when it comes to war. And in that case, they're supposed to be given every benefit of the doubt. There's no limit to the amount of money they can spend. And it's like, go do what you got to do. As long as it's in the name of defense, there's absolutely no skepticism whatsoever. Yeah.
And that's what I found in my now journey toward peace, is that it's right. It's the unspoken thing. It's war is acceptable as long as the government and right. It is completely not conservative. The U.S. military establishment. It's just a big bureaucracy, which conservatives are supposed to be skeptical of, and also add in it's destructive. It actually kills people. So it's a double negative, and we don't think about that. There's so few voices that talk about that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I want to interrupt. Go ahead. Go ahead.
To come back to Pat Buchanan, then they slur him with the anti-Semitic term or anything. They marginalize people like this. Bob Novak was a very good Catholic convert on war stuff, and he became kind of crazy Bob Novak. And
I don't know him. I don't actually know him.
He was a long time. He converted to Catholicism, I think, in the 80s or 90s. He wrote similarly to Pat Buchanan. He was a Washington insider, and more and more skeptical of government action and military action. He actually was involved in the whole Valerie Plame incident, which was releasing the name of the foreign spy, the CIA member. I don't.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about it. It sounds familiar. Right. They outed her or something, and then it was
correct. But he is also from that same tradition. He understood that conservatism and militarism don't equate each other that well, and war is not actually good for your soul or for the economy or for the system of government we supposedly have. So
right. And of course, many people will admit that and say, well, it's not good, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
right.
And it's like, but so many, but the government, we know now that they don't have to do these things. That's why they have to lie to get us to go to war, because if they told us this isn't really about defense, if people invaded our country, don't you think there'd be plenty of Americans who'd be willing to defend our country?
That's what I've been saying for the last 10 years since I joined. After I got out of the Guard, I've told my children, my oldest is only 8, but I say because they know I'm skeptical of the government, they know I'm a veteran for peace, they know all this. But I say, if somehow or another the Canadians invaded Indiana, Daddy would still probably try to protect you in some way. But that's a different mentality than setting up a base in Saudi Arabia to protect against the Canadian invasion. There's no equation there. That doesn't help. People being in Saudi Arabia doesn't help me in Indiana one bit. In fact, as we now know, it actually hurts us.
Right.
It finds our security.
Yeah, and so exactly. I'm so great to know it's not just me, it's like we're about the same age, it sounds like, and we grew up in the same time, totally oblivious. And we weren't like I didn't grow up like a hardcore Catholic family. Like, we weren't like traditionalists going to Latin Mass, wearing the veil. I admit, like we were not that in that world. I wasn't homeschooled. But we went to Mass, and I went and got confirmed, and I did CCD, and I went to Catholic school until I was in 6th grade, and went to Catholic college. Never came up, never learned it, totally in the dark. So what happened after you ended up going into? You said it was the
Wyoming Army National Guard.
Oh, the National Guard, because you thought, I won't get sent over there, right?
At that point, in early 2003, just after the initial successful invasion of Iraq, and I'll put that in quotes, there still weren't the operation tempo, as we say in the military. We weren't having to rely on National Guard and reservists that much, because we thought it was going to be an easy extrication from Iraq. So I didn't really think I would be deployed, and kind of the Afghanistan had kind of flamed up, and by 2003 it kind of come back So it didn't seem like I'd probably be deployed. By the time I was in basic training, which was the summer of 2003, a couple of months after I joined, it was clear that the war was not going as well as expected, and that, yeah, wait, National Guard probably are going to be called.
Okay,
So,
wait. So you went to law school, then you kind of left law school, right?
no, I did it in the summer. So what the military has it set up perfectly, especially for 17-year-olds. What I learned is half of the people in my basic training course were 17-year-olds whose parents had to sign for them to go join the military because they go through basic training between their junior and senior year of high school. Here I was a 25-year-old with a bunch of 17-year-olds.
Okay.
And which is an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
So these people haven't graduated high school yet, and they're in the military already because the parents so believe it's good for you. So then you do what's called, then they go back to high school for another year, and then they continue their training. So in the Guard, they allow you to do the same thing. So I went during basically the high school summer session.
Okay.
Went back to law school for another year, and then went to officer candidate school the next summer. So that they'll accommodate you if you're willing to sign up for them.
I'm sure, yeah. And yeah, you're 17. You've only been driving for a year.
Right.
You can't even vote yet, but you can sign away years of your life, and yeah.
Well,
And,
your
and
mom
the
or dad
Catholics
does
are,
it. Yeah.
huh?
Mom or dad does it.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you think a lot of them did that because they were hoping to maybe be able to pay for college that way or make a career out of it? Or what do you think their mentality is?
So that's something I've tried to talk to people about is why do people join the military? And ultimately, 90% are like me. And I saw Andrew Basovich say it. It was the free college, right? It was West Point's a very good education, and it was free, and he admitted it. There's so many like him, like me. These 17 years, it's actually a pretty good job, especially when there's not the chance of death and destruction.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure you can learn a lot of skills
But it's not about patriotism or love of country or defending the homeland. It's really about the best of the option for that person at that time, financially, essentially. Because the free college money, the pay, it's a steady paycheck. So that's what makes me cringe when people say, thank you for your service. And I joined because of money. Honestly, I gave a talk at the high school, the public high school on 9/11 or the day before this year.
Oh, wow. Cool. Oh, by the way, Eric, I just want to tell you real quick, your camera is shaking a lot.
Okay,
just to let you know. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. So you talked to this.
And they were, why did you join? Well, because I wanted to avoid debt in law school. And right. So it's really the first time they had really ever heard somebody admit probably the truth. Maybe I'm the outlier, but I've talked to a lot of people that similar. It was financial. It wasn't patriotism, love of country, the flag.
Or at least of all because you felt threatened by Al-Qaeda or whatever.
Right. That's my joke to anybody is, do you go to bed at night scared of Al-Qaeda or Russia or any of these entities out there that are so far away? Do you lose sleep over them?
Yeah, and the other thing that I love is when people say they're protecting our freedom. It's like in the past 20, are we freer now than we were 20 years ago? Do you feel like we're all freer? How is the Bill of Rights? Let's go down the Bill of Rights and look at what's happened. These wars are not good for freedom.
No, I mean, the TSA, the NSA, the taxes and the debt. I mean, that does not equate freedom. Spending money for this. So it's hard to get your mind around how conservative or Catholic or Christian or anybody can say rationally, logically, that if they've put any thought into it, that this is appropriate.
Yeah. So what was your talk about on 9/11? Like, what was the talk?
There's a high school history teacher there that's been bringing in Vietnam and World War II vets, but now he realizes that most of the kids weren't alive during 9/11. And yet many of them their parents are signing them up for the military at 17. So he wanted to bring in some vets from the post 9/11 era specifically.
Okay.
I'm sure there are about 30 or 40 of us vets there, and about 600 kids talk to us. So I only talked to probably in the 2 hours, maybe 80 of the 600. I don't know what the other 39 vets were saying, whether they're skeptical of the war or whether it actually brought them less or more security, less or more freedom.
Yeah.
I at least let them know, in my opinion, it brought less freedom, less security, and it brought me financial security. And since I survived, it was a good deal. But
could have turned out very differently.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it a Catholic high school?
No, this is the public high school. So,
wow, that's actually kind of cool that they did
I don't know if they'll invite me back next year.
Yeah, that's true. Like, you can only come if you're gonna, like, rah, go get them.
Right.
Interesting. Wow. So when was it when you were in the military? Did you get deployed overseas during that time?
I finally got deployed. So it's funny, in the military parlance, since I went from being I was going to be an officer, so I had to go through officer candidate school, then I had to go through officer training, and then I was going to switch over to the JAG Corps, the lawyer corps. So it was going to be a long time period of me being a non-deployable asset, is what they called me, a non-deployable asset.
Okay.
I actually always
instead of Top Gun, it was going to be A Few Good Men. You were like the lawyer.
Right. I eventually I went through the field artillery initially, so I learned how to blow up things from a long distance, which is actually a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong.
Sure. Young men love to blow stuff up.
It was interesting stuff, right? But it's I don't know if it brought any security to anybody anywhere. But so I was a non-deployable asset, but I always told people I'm actually a non-deployable liability because I keep getting paid and I can't be deployed. So I had this, but then I finally got married, and that was about the same time that I was free to be deployed. So happened that as soon as I got married,
no.
hey, you're going to Kuwait. So that was in 2000. We got married in 2008. We got the notice a few months later. I finally deployed in early 2009. April 2009.
Okay, so kind of like several years into the war.
Oh yeah, the surge had already kind of by that time we were actually going to start the drawdown process.
Okay.
So there were, I think when I went to Kuwait, there might have been 130,000 Americans in Iraq, and by the time I left, there were maybe 30,000. It was something, it was during that time period when it was relatively safe.
Okay.
I was in Kuwait the whole time. I went to Iraq a couple times. Speaking of morals, I had to lie to my wife, I didn't want to let her know I'm actually going north of the border.
Oh, you didn't want her to worry.
I didn't want her to worry, but it's kind of that moral compromise that as a Catholic, should I really be doing that? What happens if I had been injured in Iraq? Then she would have been confused.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but I didn't want to work but I was in Kuwait, which is supposedly it's a very safe place.
Okay.
But there's no war going on there, but I was paid as a combat pay, even though there's no war. So, and we were told, as I put in the Lou Rockwell piece, that as soon as we landed, we were told we were not going off post because the Kuwaitis are tired of American military being there for so long.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, how would we feel if the Chinese were set up in our country, 20 years?
So we have this great Catholic tradition of just war and knowing proper places and subsidiarity and all this. But it took some military intelligence lieutenant to tell me the Kuwaiti people are tired of us. It wasn't a bishop or a priest that warned me that, these people probably aren't going to like this because it's not spreading Christ's message. It's not love. It's war.
Yeah, you're an occupier.
I did it on my own. It was not thanks to the Catholic bishopric in the United States, unfortunately.
I am in the same boat. I mean, you talked about your grandfather knew about Ron Paul in the early 90s or something. I mean, right. I was like a Ron Paul revolution baby. I was involved in the campaign in 2008. I was involved again in 2012. I mean, as a volunteer, not officially. Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, it was Lou Rockwell and Ron Paul that taught me about war and peace and thinking of that as a moral issue.
Right.
It's not my own church. It was not until years later, they're the ones who got me into peace and thinking about peace and thinking about the nonsensical wars we were in and how they were unjust. And when Ron Paul ran for president, you'll probably remember this, in 2008, he said the biggest moral issue of our time is the abandonment of the Christian just war theory. Now, I don't know if ever there has been a government who's followed the Christian just war theory, but it was kind of a final straw when we abandoned even the pretense of defense and went in aggressively.
Right.
And that's what he was talking about. And I had never heard anyone talk about that before in the Catholic Church. And so they were my
Ron Paul's not Catholic either.
I know.
He knows more about it than we do.
Right. And so I was reading Lou Rockwell for years and I got interested in this. And then I discovered, the peace tradition of the church. And it was like, oh, we have this in Catholicism? I didn't even know. I thought it was just like a Ron Paul thing.
Right.
But yeah, without Ron Paul and Lou Rockwell, I would be totally in the dark about my own church's teaching.
Oh yeah, me too. It's to them, and then, like I said, Pat Buchanan, Bob Novak. Read some Bob Novak. He died of brain cancer around 2008, but he had some very strong opinions about the Iraq War.
Okay, but you're right. The minute you speak out against that, you're marginalized. I mean, I saw it within the Republican Party when I was in there because of his stance on foreign policy, which is what Tulsi Gabbard is saying now.
Right.
She's just kind of taking the Ron Paul talking points, but that's fine. We need more voices.
Yeah.
But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that because I started thinking about Tulsi.
Because we don't know that it's Ron Paul has spread the just war tradition more than the Catholic bishops.
Exactly. And the reason they don't talk about it, in my opinion, is because it's almost an exercise in absurdity to actually walk through what it teaches and compare it to reality. Because the minute you do that, it all falls apart. There is no just war.
I agree completely. I think Andrew Basovich answered it kind of appropriately during your talk, is that it's this assimilation idea. I think it still permeates the American Catholic Church. We don't want to cause problems, and that's unfortunately been our tradition is we want to fit in appropriately because of from the 1840s, the Know Nothing Party. I mean, there was actual discrimination against Catholic people. And so to avoid that, to help people on the ground, I think the bishops were in the right place, but
yeah,
we're now the most successful economy in the history of the world. That's not an issue anymore. Catholic immigrants aren't dying necessarily because of what other people are doing to them. We don't have to fit in. We should be the moral authority. We're the largest religion now in the country.
Right. We're the largest religion in the country, and we have a just war theory that if it was taught to us, we could form a massive base of resistance. Mm-hmm. But somehow, and I think it is the fault of our shepherds who just leave us in the dark about it, because if you don't tell them they're sinning and they don't know they're sinning, then it won't be a sin, because you have to know it in order for it to be a sin. So let's just leave it in the dark and let status quo go on.
That's the definition of a mortal sin. You have to have the knowledge that it's a mortal sin. That's true. And so if you don't teach it, it's just go along to get along.
Right. It goes back to that. Killing is wrong except in war, and then that's in your mind. And I just got an email this morning. There was apparently a meeting of the bishops, a semi-annual meeting last week. And somebody had read all the documents and speeches, and apparently there was not a single, this is what he said. He said there was no word about Catholics in the ongoing non-declared U.S. wars of empire. Not a single word about it was brought up. So that's where we are now. It's not even an issue that's talked about.
So I went to a talk. We have a priest that's visiting from Rome, but he's Nigerian. And he's here during his kind of academic breaks while he's writing. He's writing here instead of in Rome. Yeah. He gave a talk on the mission of the church is the mission of the Holy Spirit last night. And he didn't address militarism, but somebody asked, do you think that the church is reaching the goals, the charism of the Holy Spirit? And his response, I kind of had a negative view because Veterans Day tends to put me kind of in a funk about militarism. And he brought me out of that because he said, the church is a universal church. In places, it's growing strongly. In other places, it's not. And what was he left unsaid is the United States Catholic Church is not necessarily the strength of the church at this point in history. So you and I, we look at through the lens of militarism that the U.S. is involved so much everywhere, and it is such a sin, and it's so immoral, and it's so disappointing that our fellow Catholics don't know better and aren't taught better. But worldwide, war is being reduced. The United States is actually backing off from its warrior mentality. Now, there's still the ultra patriotism, salute the troops, and that's so weird. But in action, things. So I guess the takeaway, the positive from Father Hillary is that the Holy Spirit's still working, and it takes time, right? And it's working universally. That's what we need to stay positive about. So
we have to keep that in mind, and that's
the
great.
U.S. is the purveyor of too much violence, but there are other places where I pulled up after that talk last night. I pulled up Wikipedia just to see where current wars are, and if the U.S. weren't involved, there would be very few wars right now.
Right.
But wars have reduced, so I mean, it's not as grim as when people try to thank me for my service, and I try to explain. Well, it actually makes you less safe, and they don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear it. That's what.
Yeah. What would you rather? I mean, I'm always wondering this. What would you rather people say? I mean, what should we say to
to veterans?
Yeah, instead of thank you for your service, like that. It's like they could have done things that they are not proud of. And we're all just saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, that's got to create some cognitive dissonance, right? I mean, I don't know.
Oh, it does. I have a hard time. I don't know of too many veterans that ask for it is the thing, but we don't push back either. There's very few like glory hogs or I deserve adulation.
Yeah.
I don't see it. But it's just this rote knee-jerk. Thank you for your service. So my kids go to a classical Christian school.
Yes, classical education. I'm a big fan.
And but they still had a Veterans Day service, and I explained that I'm a veteran, combat veteran, even though I didn't really see combat, but per the U.S. government, I'm a combat veteran, so I wear that on my sleeve when it's helpful politically. Yeah. And still, the school head mistress, she still had the Veterans Day service. She offered for my kids not to sing the songs, but they like to sing. But she wouldn't really listen to my deeper arguments, and the whole point of a classical education is to get deeper, right? To strip away the
critically,
right, critically, logic, use all those skills, and even people that otherwise should know better how to think on this one issue, they can't
because I think it feels disrespectful to them to even go there and question those things. Right. So there are certain things like that we can't question, and yeah, that's a shame. Tell me quickly, I know you have to go pick up the kiddos, but can you tell me real quickly about what happened with your church and the letter that you sent?
So I've heard nothing back. Well, in fact, so they put together the Catholic movement. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
All about a soldier here praying.
With the rosary, yep.
A rosary, they didn't respond. My wife and I are not giving money to a Catholic bishop ever again until I get some kind of strong feeling that they understand just war and start teaching it. I'm done with the
Hallelujah. Yes, we need that.
We're done.
They need pressure to admit that we all know this is an issue. And a lot of people will get very reactionary, and you can't question just war theory, and we have to. It doesn't. It either needs to be modified, clarified, changed, or at the very least, just start teaching it. That's it.
Start at the beginning. Right at the beginning. Just go to that and try. But I will never give to another bishop in the American Catholic Church. If I move to a different country where there's not militarism, I'll probably support their bishop appeal. But I'm done with the United States Catholic bishops and my financial support. That's all. I mean, I've written my letters. I've written 3 or 4 letters over the years. Never got even the Christian decency of a response.
Yeah.
I don't live in this huge diocese either. It's rural Indiana.
Yeah.
It's not the bishop, the Archbishop of New York. I bet he might even respond to me. Who knows? But this bishop won't. So it's
Yeah.
sad. I'll pray for him. Pray the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
infiltrates his mind. But
Yeah, I think that it's changing. I think it used to be just kind of a fringe element, like the super liberals who were
right,
like questioning these things. And I feel strongly that we need to get like a cross political
right,
discussion on this going, which is why I do try to invite, which upsets some of my listeners, because I invite people on the podcast that don't agree with them 100% on everything.
right.
But we're never going to find that. There's a variety of perspectives that people of goodwill can have on this issue. And so my goal with this channel is like, let's listen to any valid Catholic perspective. And we can all unite against this. We can all agree, we should be able to agree that at the very least, we need to start teaching just war theory and taking it seriously. And then we have to do an honest job of actually talking about the real wars we're in and comparing it and saying, hey guys, it doesn't match up. Maybe we shouldn't be participating in this. Seems obvious to me, but I know I've been thinking about these things for 10 years and not everybody has.
Right.
And there's other things that people know about that way more than I do that I can learn from them on. But this just happens to be the thing that I, for some reason, have been contemplating. And it sounds like you're in the same boat. And
Try and pray. But like I said, financially, I'm not supporting bishops that don't teach it. That's our policy now.
yeah,
I gave to the Archdiocese for the military when I was the member of the Archdiocese, but I won't give to them ever again either until they. I don't think we need an Archdiocese for the military in the United States.
Oh, you don't? Why not? I'm
I
interested.
don't think we should have any foreign. We shouldn't have any foreign military bases. That they should be served by the local bishop. If it's defense, if it's actually for the common defense, as the Constitution says, there'd be a small garrison at a few places, and they could just go to mass with everybody else. we wouldn't need a special priest to serve me in Kuwait or Iraq.
That's a really good point, and I didn't even bring that up in my interview about the Archdiocese for Military Services. But if we're a worldwide church, I mean, yeah, why don't you just go to the Catholic Church?
What? Well, our supposed ally, Kuwait, doesn't allow a Catholic church except a U.S. military. So that's what we're defending the freedom of the Kuwaiti emir to not allow Catholic churches. The same with Saudi Arabia.
I did not know. Okay, that is another thing I've never actually thought of before. Are you serious?
Yeah, that's who I was there at the invitation of the Emir of Kuwait, who threw a couple of people in jail for some Twitter comments about the same time I was there that were just marginally pro-democracy. Like we should allow a vote here in Kuwait, which is I thought we were supposedly spreading democracy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only Catholic churches in Kuwait were U.S. military, and I think there was maybe a priest that serviced the embassies. But yeah, right, you're not allowed to have a Catholic church in Kuwait.
I'm stupid. I didn't know that. Okay, yeah. Just to make it.
That's why it's the universal. And then in Iraq, where there was a very strong Catholic church, has been destroyed by the American invasion. That horrible guy Saddam Hussein actually allowed people to be Catholic, at least. I mean.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and all the Christians who have been displaced and killed. I'm reading a book right now called The 21 about Coptic Christians who were martyred. But yeah, they're like being eradicated. Yeah. So how are we spreading democracy? How are we defending freedom? It makes absolutely no sense. But yeah, okay. So I know you have to go pick up your kids. Can you give us a brief update on you're in Veterans for Peace now?
Actually, so I joined Veterans for Peace. Our chapter basically is disintegrated, so I'm basically like it at this point. They're just.
All right. Where are you? In case somebody's listening, where?
Carmel, Indiana, Central Indiana. Carmel, Indiana, Indianapolis area. Indianapolis.
Okay, so if you're a veteran and you want to join Veterans for Peace, contact Eric. I'll find a way to put you in touch. Actually, what I'll do is I'll link to your articles on Lou Rockwell, and then I'm sure they can find your email through the articles.
I don't think we can figure some of that.
Okay, just contact at Catholics Against Militarism. Email me. I'll hook you up with Eric. But yeah, if you're in the area, sounds like you guys need some support out there. And what's happened since you got back? You got married. How many kids do you have?
3 children, all daughters.
3 girls. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
They're definitely pro-peace. They know, and it's I mean my wife she's a convert to Catholicism, but she is 100% supportive of my pro-peace message. I mean, she was the wife of somebody deployed, and so she understands, and so it's very helpful to have that internal support, because it's hard to be against the U.S. military. But in some ways, I feel like it's the cross that I'm taking up. I mean, there's probably better things I could be doing, but it's the cross I bear is trying to spread this message of peace. And it's very helpful to have a support system at your own family. I would be in despair probably if I didn't have such a strong wife and children that support. So, because even in my own family, my own dad kind of is skeptical of my views. Is like, it's all right. I was there. I know, and he doesn't. But so strong marriages are important. I mean, it's going to build from the family. So we need more families that understand, and
parents that teach their kids, because the bishops and the priests aren't going to do it.
So my children will not be joining the military, at least not at 17.
Yeah,
we will not sign any documents for them.
Yeah, once you're old enough to have to have your own health insurance, then maybe, it's like 26 now that the kids can stay on it. Well, thanks for everything. Thanks for being willing to talk to me. It's just great to know that other people like you are out there. It's a little lonely sometimes, and we know the hostility that we get from people when we say these things.
Thank God for Lou Rockwell.
Amen. Yeah. And I know a lot of people will chime in on the comments about Austrian economics, and for those of you, I mean, somebody needs to set up a Catholic economics channel, and I will listen to that. I will read that. That would be interesting. We just can't get into all that here, but he is a champion for peace. He's one of my heroes, and without him, I would be in the dark. So yeah, I'm glad that we could meet through Lou Rockwell's site, and hopefully you will be more involved. Maybe blog with us, or we'll talk about other ways. Maybe you guys will hear from Eric in the future. But thank you.
Speaking of Austrian economics, I'm reading the history of Europe right now, and I'm into the period before the French Revolution. And the French king, Louis XIV, this is the early 1700s, he expanded their military precipitously that led to this revolution, and it broke the back of the people. But one interesting thing, Austrian economics-wise, is that in 1670 or so, they set up a silver-backed coin. For 30 years, it kept its value, which is kind of this Austrian economics. But as the military expanded, is when they started cutting the value of that coin. So to use the Archbishop Cardinal of Chicago, the seamless garment, or the seamless about life to death. It's kind of a seamless garment between fungible money and fungible military resources. So there is, to me, a direct connection between Austrian economics and peace, is because by deflating the money supply, inflating, you allow this to happen without real cost to people. So people can cheer the troops, but it's not really costing us in taxes so much as it is inflation.
Yes, right. And so our dollar just doesn't buy as much as it did, which is why a lot of people are struggling. And it's also another reason why people can't get behind the anti-war effort, because everybody's working 3 jobs,
right,
and exhausted because we're all trying to feed our families and everything. And yeah, they just keep us on the jerk wheel.
So the generals that can't win a war, even if the whole point is to win these wars, they end up working for Lockheed Martin anyway.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much. If you write an essay about that fungible, I love the comparison of the seamless garment with this idea of money and war. I think you should write that essay.
Okay. I've got it right here in front of me. So
awesome. Thank you. Thanks. It was great to meet you, Eric.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.